I'm Allison Denny, a librarian from North Texas, and welcome to the Epic Romance panel. Epic Romance brings together sweeping romantasy tales filled with danger, magic, and love that defies the odds. It's not just romance, it's not just fantasy, but it's an amazing blend of both. Today, we're excited to talk to the following authors about their books. Terry J. Benton-Walker, author of The Drakon King, published by Bramble Macmillan. Lauren Blackwood, author of The Queen's Bodyguard, published by Delacorte Press, Penguin Random House. Kalie Cassidy, author of In the Wake of the Ruined, published by Little, Brown and Company, Hachette. M.K. Lobb, author of The Dark in Her Veins, published by Sourcebooks Casablanca, Sourcebooks. And Tina Mars, author of This Wretched Alchemy, published by Saturday Books, Macmillan. Unfortunately, Terry isn't able to join us today. We will miss talking to him and learning about the Drakon King from its author. I'll give you some details on it now, starting with the publisher snippet. Queer, Black, and sexy as hell, The Drakon King is romantasy at its best. A forbidden love story between princes in the court of a cruel king and an edge-of-your-seat tale of missing dragons, ruthless betrayals, and stolen hearts. The Drakon King is a story of Prince Reverie, who wants to escape his life at court through partying if nothing else is possible, and Prince Xandrith, the Drakon King's brother, who leaves his own court to find a lost friend. Reverie and Xandrith cross paths away from their courts, and they make an agreement to help each other. And because this is romantasy, you know that agreement turns into something more. The story has a detailed creation myth, fantastic world building, tropes we all love like forced proximity, enemies to lovers, and it's also tagged cinnamon roll, so it has a lot of good things going on. If this sounds like a good fit for your collection or for your personal to-be-read pile, The Drakon King is going to be available on November 10th, 2026. It's published by Bramble Macmillan, and again, The Drakon King is written by Terry J. Benton-Walker. And now we'll start by getting to know the rest of our panelists a little better. Please introduce yourself and tell us all about your books. Lauren, can we start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lauren Blackwood, author of The Queen's Bodyguard, which releases this August 18th. I'm really excited about it. Oh my gosh. Because you guys saw that cover, right? Crazy. So it's about a Queen Theora, who is coming to the end of a year-long war. And so she has to go to peace negotiations with the enemy, but she doesn't trust them. So she recruits a brutal warrior to pretend to be her husband, so she can secretly bring along a bodyguard. And of course, you know what happens next.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. Kalie, can you let us know about your works? Kalie, I think you're still on mute if you want to tap that and start over.
I do want to unmute. Sorry. My books are In the Veins of the Drowning, and the forthcoming title is In the Wake of the Ruined, that comes out July 7th. In the Veins of the Drowning, it's a dark romantic fantasy about a siren named Imogen, who is hiding in a kingdom that hunts her kind, and she flees from a very brutal king who raised her with a neighboring king who she forms a bond with. And the sequel is her trying to, here it is her trying to basically unbind herself from this deity that she has been stuck to. And it is dark. I really lean into the dark fantasy elements, but it is also very, very romantic.
Great. Thank you so much. MK, will you let us know about your book?
Yeah, so I'm MK Lobb. My upcoming book is The Dark in Her Veins. It's out August 25th, I'm pretty sure, from Sourcebooks Casablanca. It is a dark romantasy with kind of a noir-inspired setting, and it's a story about a place where sin is a fatal disease, and the rich and devout hire those who are less wealthy and less fortunate to kind of sin on their behalves. It's about a girl named Talon who is a hired sinner for a man called the Prophet, who is the most powerful guy in the city. And the next job that she tricks him into letting her do puts her on the path with a guy called the Warden, who is the exact same kind of hot and morally black that she is.
Great, thank you so much. And Tina, will you let us know about your title?
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Tina Mars, and my book is this Wretched Alchemy, which is an epic dark romantasy. So we have gladiator alchemists where the throne isn't inherited, but it's claimed through bloodshed. So we have this bloody competition, but she's the only one who is not playing to win. She doesn't care about the throne. She just wants to kill the deadliest alchemist before November 10th with Saturday Books.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. We're gonna move on to our next round of questions. Again, this is the Epic Romance panel, so I'd love to discuss how each of you feel your titles fit within the romantasy genres and its tropes. Let's start with Lauren. Your characters, Theora and Argos, are living a classic trope, pretending to be married. Why do you think readers are drawn to this trope, and what can they expect from the relationship arc in The Queen's Bodyguard?
I think it's like exciting. It's like you can like a dark, like handsome stranger, it's like sort of a dangerous kind of thing. Like, so it's a little danger, it's a little excitement, it's like a little bit of the unknown. So I think it's sort of like of course we don't want to do that in real life, because the danger and the unknown, but we can live that through fiction, and that's the beautiful part about it. So yeah, I do think it's like sort of a fun way to have sort of like this dangerous relationship. And also, what was the next part of the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. What can readers expect from the relationship arc in The Queen's Bodyguard?
Oh, relationship arc, yes, because they're both very different people, but also they're very much the same. So she's a queen, he's a warrior. They have very different beliefs when it comes to politics. So he is not really on board with politics, and that's kind of her life. And so they really butt heads a lot throughout the book. But eventually, through pretending to be in love, because they sort of have to survive this mission, they learn how to trust each other, and they kind of learn that the other side is not so bad.
Great. Thank you so much for letting us know. All right, Tina. So your characters, Revel and the Warbringer, represent another beloved trope, enemies to lovers. But it seems to me like both of these characters actually have enemies like surrounding them at every turn. So what is different about their relationship with each other, and how does that drive your story?
I was excited to get the enemies to lovers trope question because it's probably so many of our favorite. I think that's why, Zutara, Katara, and Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender is such a fun pairing, even though that's not what really happens. I love when, they're on opposing sides of a major conflict, and it's not just that they hate each other, but they want one another's demise. And so my favorite subset, I would say, is when one was sent to kill the other. I think oftentimes there's some sort of villain that's sent to kill the FMC. But in my story, she was the one who was sent to kill the villain, and she has to do so to win her sister's freedom. And that's the only person that she cares about. So it poses this big problem. Yes, I love Katara and Zuko. They should have ended up together. So it poses a big problem because the stakes are very high. Yes, like as you mentioned, there are other deadly heirs. They all equally want to win. They're all willing to kill the other for the throne. And so she's navigating, avoiding being killed and staying alive in this competition. But with the Warbringer, He is the biggest threat. He's also her specific target. She has to kill him to win her sister's freedom. But there's a problem, and it might turn out he might be the one person that she needs alive to get to the end and to survive to the end. So I think those are very much at tension with one another. So I would say that's kind of that's what is driving the story, and that's what is different about their relationship. She doesn't really need the other people alive, but she might need him to be alive to get to the end, and then she'll kill him. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll have to read it and find out, right? Well, thank you so much. MK, so The Dark in Her Veins is clearly a fantasy with its magic system, but your narration style and your depiction of the Veilstad's like seedy underbelly are also very noir coded. So how do these noir elements add to the story and to Talon's journey?
So initially, I wasn't actually even trying to write it as a noir story. It's just kind of through my world building, it organically came together. I think because the noir vibes tend to be the vibes that I'm more drawn to. So there's like that shadowy urban environment that's sort of reflective of the mood of the book. There's a sense of claustrophobia and danger. And with the character interactions, there's a lot of betrayal, deals that go wrong. Um, and the idea that the characters want to be better but keep making the wrong choices over and over again. And so the main character, Talon, is kind of a mix of two archetypes from the noir genre, the anti-hero and the femme fatale. So I kind of turned those into one person. So it's somebody who's very morally gray and kind of at the bottom of society. She's subject to all these systemic issues, and her internal monologue has a lot of bleakness and kind of a cynical feeling to it. And another thing I just really like about noir is the way I'm able to write from her perspective, because there's kind of a sharp, quick element to writing dialogue and thoughts, I find, in that genre. Um, but yeah, I used to create her character, but also the ending of the book is very indicative of noir, and I could do that because there's a sequel. So I won't say anything else about that, but yeah, it worked really well in kind of building this dark fantasy world for me with those elements.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for elaborating. Finally, Kalie. So Imogen and Theodore already have an established relationship in this title. Were you able to dig deeper into any of the story elements because of their existing bond?
I was. And I have to be careful because my book is a sequel. So if you haven't read the first, I will try and not spoil it for you. But they do have a sort of relationship at the beginning of this book. And I find with writing romance, especially one that has to span two stories, you have to get really good at keeping them, keeping the tension up and keeping them apart. And I think that it's most interesting when that's both internal and external conflict. And so because I do keep them apart at the beginning, for a good amount of this second book, they both, I think there's a lot more character that we each get to learn. We get to learn so much more about each of them, and they get to learn so much more about themselves in this book. On top of expanding the world, expanding this theme of autonomy, both as individuals, as a nation. I'm like spanning this sort of theme of, self-actualization at a personal level for them and at a bigger level, meaning their kingdoms and their relationships. So I do feel like this book, if In the Veins of the Drowning is skimming the surface, then this book we're going down deep.
Great, thank you so much. Next, I'd like to talk about everyone's inspirations in writing these titles. So Tina, this Wretched Alchemy is inspired by your interest in ancient Rome and your father's stories of growing up in Japan. Can you elaborate on how these elements intersected for you in writing this work?
Yes, I would love to elaborate. So creating a world with two clashing cultures It was not just this random, this would seem cool to smush together, but it was really a manifestation of my own identity, being biracial, navigating multiple worlds, trying to find my place. I was born and mostly raised in Southern California, but each of my 4 grandparents came from different countries. My grandmother was the one who was from Japan. So both my parents are biracial. And so this running theme in my own life is identity. Who am I? Where do I fit? How do others categorize me? Where do I belong? And so I really loved exploring this question. This kind of runs through the story. How does one ever feel like they're enough of any one thing to be worthy of love? And so kind of going to my father's stories, he grew up in Japan and Okinawa, but I dug into a lot of its culture throughout my life. Like there was that, but there was also, digging into the food customs, anime like Full Metal Alchemist. If anybody knows that anime, let me know. But Japanese mythology, like Studio Ghibli. And so this is going to sound a little bit random and a tangent, but it's not. One of the Studio Ghibli films, Pompoko. So there are raccoons that they're trying to scare off construction workers from deforestation in their home. Yes, someone in the chat says FMA is a masterpiece. Yes. Brotherhood. Yes. I'm just responding to the chat. FMA, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is the best anime of my life. Okay, so back to Pompoko. They're trying to scare off these construction workers, and these raccoons shapeshift to scare other people, and they put on they have no faces. And so when I was watching that, I was like, this is brilliant. I immediately researched where that idea came from. It's from Japanese mythology. It opened this whole new world of more Japanese spirits. I couldn't stop reading about it, blending into a lot of what my dad had told me. And so I thought, this is the kind of mythology that I really want in my world. I don't have raccoons in it, but I do have these creepy, faceless demons that steal faces. And then kind of bringing in that Roman history, I think that's kind of a more, I don't want to say overused, but very we see this all the time in fantasy stories, the gladiator spectacle. And so I was kind of like, these two worlds have not existed in the same room together in a story, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I could tell. So I thought, this is where I live, and I need to build a world around this. So really, it was kind of this exploration of identity, very personal to me. I have this character that came from different worlds, and she's navigating a setting of clashing cultures. And so that just reflected my own journey navigating a world that was not necessarily built for me, and finding my place in it because I had to carve it out for myself.
Okay, thank you so much. That was an amazingly detailed answer. I'm going to have to go look this up because I'm fascinated by the raccoons, and I need to know all of the details of that as well. So thank you.
No, you need to.
Yeah, thank you for getting so in depth about that. All right, Kalie. So let's come to you next. In the Wake of the Ruined is the second in the Siren Mage duology. I'm curious, what drew you to sirens when you were telling these stories?
I was most certainly the Greek mythology kid. I wore through all of my books on Greek myth. The siren myth always fascinated me in that it has persisted and it has shifted and it has changed for millennia in art, in literature. But I was always just so drawn to the fact that how did we start with these bird women, and then we morph to these, mermaid type things. And then there's art of just straight up women in the water. And I was really drawn to this idea of this shifting, which is where a lot of that inspiration for, you will see the sirens in this story shift, and you'll see how they change even further in the sequel. And I just thought that was really fascinating, but also how this femme fatale sort of, the shape of them changed, but the warning was always the same, to be wary that they will be your demise. And I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to ask questions about that. And I wanted to kind of find a way to tell a story that turns that on its head. And so always drawn to that. Also very much loved The Little Mermaid, very much loved Hans Christian, both the Disney and the dark one. And so reading The Little Mermaid as a kid and being so disturbed, this was sort of my morphing of these stories and finding ways to tell my own.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is for both MK and Lauren. So both of your books contain elements that readers will recognize from our own, mundane world that we live in every day. I was reading them, and there are bodegas, there are cars, there are skyscrapers, there's paperwork, there's hairstylists, etc. All kinds of just daily stuff in my fantasy novels. So what was the thing that inspired you to keep these and some other kind of more modern elements in your stories? MK, do you want to grab that one first?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, my book has the noir inspiration, and that generally requires more of an urban setting. To explain why the setting is the way it is, I think it would make more sense if I explained like where I got those ideas from. A lot of the institutions in the book are inspired by both moral panic and also the era of the Know Nothings, which is like an 1840s to 50s movement in America. Not all of the movement inspired this, but certain elements like the overregulation of industry and this reversion to sort of traditionalism. And there are these characters in the book called Diabolus, which is what the warden is, and they kind of survive off of sin and taking confession. And so it kind of connects back to the Know Nothings distrust of Catholicism. And the prophet in the book, he essentially functions as this, like in moral panics, you have a moral entrepreneur who kind of believes that they're doing good or profiting off fear. And that's the role that the prophet plays in this. And I think I combined those things because they all seem to fit into a urban noir world kind of well. They all had these threats to tradition. And so when I put all those things together, the kind of idea that I was going with was if all of these ideologies took root and led to these certain institutional trajectories, what would that world end up looking like? And so that's why there are certain elements that are modern, like there's rotary phones and somebody has a typewriter, but we don't have anything like televisions, things like that. So it's kind of stuck in like a mid 1900s era in terms of inventions. And that's because I was trying to think of if you had this traditionalist institution that was overseeing the way that your industry was regulated and the progress that was made, where would technology kind of stall? So, yeah.
I actually love that answer. I love that. Mine was so Queen's Bodyguard. It's sort of the world. Well, Fiora's colony, Arania, is inspired by like 1920s New York. So it's 1920s New York vibes, but without the sort of like, not grindiness, because I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, I love that stuff, but it's like without the smoke because of the magic they have. So Theora's magic in her colony is that they can weave silk into basically anything. And so I was like, okay, so 1920s, but they're building things with this silk. And so like they don't have machines per se because that's their magic doing it. So I wanted to see like what kind of world can I create where the magic is more like functional. So one colony, they weave silk into anything. Another colony, it's more medical based magic. So yeah, I wanted to have more functional magic that way. So plus, who says fantasy has to be like medieval times? I'm trying to have like the vibes of 1920s and like the old school phones and like the Art Deco. I want that, but give me magic.
Sounds amazing. Thank you to both for going into some more detail on that. Here's another question that I have for everyone. So who is the ideal reader or the target audience for your book? And what is the message or the experience that you hope this reader takes away from your story? Lauren, let's just bounce right back to you.
I am so used to, like, all my other novels are YA, and they're all sort of a deep, like, powerful message, and they're all based on folklore. And I was like, let me just write a book for funsies, you know? So I'm like, just a book with all the romantic tropes I love, where they fall in love. There's no like racism. There's no, deep, like, well, there's political issues. Obviously, it's a political drama, but, so really, I was just like, let me write a book where some people in their 30s can fall in love, because I love writing YA, and I love my teen readers. Like, they're my favorite people ever. But I'm like, as a woman in my 30s, I'm like, hey, we need love too, So my goal really was like, I want to write a romance for women in their 30s and 40s. Most of the characters are 25 and up. Well, 30 and up. One character is 25. And yes, you're welcome. I'm like, yes, women in their 30s need loving too. So, that was basically my goal for this.
And that is great. Sometimes we do just need like a fun, entertaining book that we know we can just enjoy without having to, all the time get into the super nitty gritty, deep philosophical elements. Sometimes you just want to read a fun book, right? So I appreciate that answer so much. Thank you for letting us know. Tina, can you let us know about your ideal reader?
Yes. As someone also in their 30s, thank you, Lauren. I love that so much. And I love having that age group protagonist. So yeah, I would say my ideal reader is going to be someone that just loves these high epic fantasy quests, the deadly competitions, the very intense enemies to lovers type storylines. But also, sorry, I think there's a trash truck. Can you hear that right now? Like right now? Okay, maybe it's blocking it out. It's really loud. Okay, so let me center myself. Okay, so just as much my ideal reader is somebody who's in the middle of becoming something. So felt like they didn't fully belong anywhere, or they're in the process of letting go of something that they were taught to believe. The magic system, I'm going to talk about magic system because this is going to tie in, I promise. The magic system became this perfect vehicle for that theme. I've always been drawn to alchemy. So it's not just because of Full Metal Alchemist, which is the best, but like even stories like Frankenstein, like it came from that kind of, it's this old tradition spanning history, cultures, blending science and mysticism. I loved chemistry in school, even though I actually struggled a lot with it. But for me, like transmutation within alchemy, it's the central theme in the story, the characters, the plot. I feel like I went through my own, like, alchemy, like this transmutation myself when I wrote this book. It is my debut. So when I started this book, I was very much plagued with doubt. Like, I don't know if that I'm capable of this. And so when I completed it, it really showed me what I was capable of. It helped me discover a lot about myself. And so this thematic line throughout this story, that is the principle of this alchemy magic system. I'm just going to say one quote in the book that's a theme is as above, so below. It comes from the Emerald Tablet, which was from like 6th to 9th century. I think it was phrased in the Emerald Tablet, like that which is above is like that which is below, something like that. But it's grown to mean a lot of things throughout time and history. And so for me, it means like balance needs to be preserved. So you can't gain anything without giving something up in equal measure. It's not, I'm going to bring up Avatar one more time. This is the last time, I swear. Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you can just like firebend and it's really easy. It's that, if you want to understand, if you want to manipulate something, you have to understand the object, the material, the composition, to then be able to manipulate it, transmute it into something else. And there's always a cost. So wrapping it up, my hope is that you see the characters go through this internally to get through the other side. And my biggest hope for my target reader, I guess, is that, you're going to go through your own transmutation by the last page. And I hope it hurts a lot. That is what I'll leave you with.
Great, thank you so much. I do just want to note, DJ Allen, we see your question in the chat, and we will get to that at the end of the our pre-planned discussions. For the rest of the audience, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those in the Q&A. We will get to as many of those as we have time for at the end of the panel. Just wanted to let you know that we did see that, and we'll be coming back to that. But for now, Kalie, can you let us know about your ideal reader and what you hope they're getting from your books?
I can. I also write for adults, and it is I think I was such a big, and I think a lot of us were such big YA readers. When I think about what we're writing now, it feels like YA was like the mother of this more adult genre. And I'm so happy to see fantasy romance kind of bloom for grown-ups. I really focus on writing character focused fantasy. I write pacey plots. So if you like a fast-paced book, this duology is very fast-paced. I also really, the plot matters to me very much, but I try to, when I tell stories, I want everything to feel like it's intentionally, and I work very hard at weaving all of those pieces together intentionally to show the character's full growth. And so if you really like coming to stories for the characters and seeing where they start and seeing how every aspect, the romance and the political aspects and the stakes and the tension, how all of those things coalesce into this character's whole journey, then I very much think that this duology is for you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And finally, MK, can you let us know about your ideal reader and what you hope they experience?
Yeah, much like Lauren, I wrote young adult before I wrote this book. My first 4 books are all young adult, actually, so this is my adult debut. And I know my last answer probably made it sound like my book is very history dense and intellectual. I don't think anybody who reads it would even know that I had all of those inspirations. I do a lot of nerdy research in the background as I'm forming my world, and it's actually more of a book it's a book for people who love nerdy research too, but it's aimed more at dark romance readers. So I kind of describe it as a collision of fast-paced fantasy and the people who like the beats of a dark romance book. So I keep saying to people, it's for anybody who likes to read about freaks being freaks together, because the characters are all very morally black-gray, like I said earlier. I tried to write it so that every person who's a main character could be construed as a villain, depending on how you look at it. And so by the time you get to the end of the story, I've kind of told a second story through flashbacks for the main character, and I'm kind of building her backstory so that you understand how she came to be the person that she is throughout the story that happens in the present day. And a lot of that has to do with kind of tackling what it means when this mental idea of cultism and doctrine overrides interpersonal connections, and how that affects her when she loses her family to this sort of cult mentality. And so by the time we get to the end of the book, some explosive things happen, and obviously I'm not going to spoil anything, but I hope that I've written characters who are terrible, but that people understand why they've done what they've done. And it's also just I hope it's fun to read. Like, it's inspired by dark romance. It's very fast paced in a way that I think really works with the noir genre, and it's spicy, and I just like it. So I hope other people like it.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, nerdy research fans seems like a good fit for this library journal conference full of librarians, because that's, like a pipeline into librarianship of I do too much research. How can I do that professionally? So perfect. Sounds amazing. Thank you for letting us know more about that. I'm going to move on to talking about romantic relationships. This seems really obvious for talking about romantasy. Obviously, romance is very important, but there are lots of other things going on in all of your books. Like, your characters all have goals, they have plans. The world building is fascinating. So I'd like to talk about how romance is driving the plot and the character development in your stories, or sometimes vice versa. So Lauren, let's start with Queen Theora. She has a really strong personality, which is, pretty necessary for dealing with politics and political enemies. But we're soon learning that Argos also has a very strong personality. So what growth do we see in these two characters as a result of their, coming together?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. She could not have picked the worst warrior to work with, like personality wise. So, like, she's a queen. She's used to getting her way, and like people do what she says. And meanwhile, his beliefs are he doesn't even acknowledge the monarchy as like his ruler, So he doesn't care that she's a queen. He's just like, okay, I will do this mission because it's my honor to do so from, I'm not going to give too much away, but so they're kind of put together. They really don't have a choice. And now they have to pretend to be in love, because they actually have to pull this off and make people believe they're in love, even though everybody knows Theora and she's kind of cold and she like doesn't do the girly stuff. But now she's got to act like, oh yeah, I'm in my soft girl era with this man I don't know, So that's rough for her. Meanwhile, he's having a great time, like with the PDA, like trying to make her uncomfortable. And she's like, look, you better slow down. Except she actually likes it. So, yeah, they are butting heads the whole way. But I think it kind of forces them, like the situation they're in, because, they have to pretend they're in love, kind of forces them to like get to know each other a little more. And so because they're so similar in that way, they realize they're similar in a lot of other ways. And so it gets a little easier further into the book. But at the beginning, they're like, look, I'm only here because I have to be.
Amazing, fascinating. That's kind of like the forced marriage, pretend fake relationship, like at its peak, right? When it's not just the personal relationship, but you have like the politics and so many other things depending on it. Thank you so much for letting us know about that. All right, so Tina, so your character Revel had been training for the next call for years. When we meet her, like she's already done so much work for this, hoping for the chance to kind of win some power for her family. So how does her connection with the Warbringer impact her efforts in the call and her efforts towards protecting and working towards her family?
They are in direct opposition with one another, which makes it quite a pickle. So there's a scene where Revel has this perfect opportunity to kill her mark. And it's like, that means halfway completing the mission, she still has to do one more thing, saving her family. She's in this competition and she's somewhere she shouldn't be, which is in this private orchid garden. It's very pretty. And somebody's killed, and to avoid being suspect, like the Warbringer just happens to be there, shoves her into an alcove. You got to be quiet because the guards are there and they might see her. And she's like, oh my God, this is my perfect, I can just kill him right now. She does attempt to kill him then, like stabs him in the throat. But every time like she's faced with a opportunity to kill him, it gets harder and harder. because, you know, she's aware she's being used as this tool. She is only a hand that's supposed to drive the blade through her enemy on behalf of someone else. So her growth comes from making choices on her own terms, but that will come at a cost to her mission. So the engine of the whole story is both of those things. Like, she has this goal, but she has a connection with the person she's supposed to kill. So kind of like what I think Kalie was saying, I wanted the romantic stakes and the mission stakes to be the same. Like, they were kind of like in a, you know, it's intersex right there. That's like right there. So every step closer to him is a step away from the one thing that she wants the most. And so that's what makes both so dangerous.
Great, thank you. So MK, when we meet Talon, she's doing dirty work for others as, you know, a sinner. How much of her role as a sinner has she absorbed into her personality, and how does that influence her interactions with the warden?
I would say, in terms of how much of her role has she absorbed into her personality, the answer is all of it. But I don't think it's just because of the job that she's doing for the Prophet. It's kind of the product of what she was made to believe her whole life. So as I said before, there are a bunch of flashback scenes that show her life as she kind of grows up in this cult, and loses her connection with her family, most notably her sister, because they start to believe, even when she's a child, that she's a sinner. And as I said, they start to move away from her as they move closer to this specific doctrine. And so I think because she was branded as a sinner early, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. She's been told that's what I am, and so that's what she becomes. So once it's her actual job, it's kind of already baked into her, I guess. And I don't think she feels like there are any other options. I say I don't think as if I didn't make her up, but and then she has this kind of cynical, selfish, bleak personality. This idea of like she has nobody to worry about but herself because there's nobody left but herself. And there's actually a specific quote that my publisher posted today that I totally forgot about, but it was, "I'm already damned, so I might as well choose how I burn." And I think that's really indicative of her mindset throughout the entire book. So yeah, in terms of the warden, it's interesting to watch them interact because they're both terrible people who don't think they can be redeemed, and they're fine with it, and they're kind of a mirror of each other.
Great, thank you so much for letting us know. All right, and then Kalie, so Imogen, and since this is the second in duology, I'm not getting into spoilers, but it is a little bit referencing things that if you pick up the book and look at the back of it, you might see. So just for those of you in the audience who might not have had a chance to get to it yet, I'm not giving away anything that you couldn't find just on the book itself on the internet. But since Imogen has already kind of gone through a journey in the first book, she's already accepted a lot of things about herself and her magic, but she still has some work to do in the wake of the ruined. So does she struggle with kind of having to balance her duty and her relationship with Theodore as a result?
Yes, and I'll go into this a bit too, and I'll talk about, I think, the duology as, you know, the romantic arc in the duology as a whole. That you know, the dynamic between them in the beginning of this story is they don't fully see each other correctly, and they also don't fully see themselves correctly. And it's through challenging one another that they start to see themselves clearly, and one another with more clarity as well. And if book one is them, you know, sort of falling for each other, book two is Imogen, I would say, learning how to love herself in a way that allows her to be with someone. But there's also an entire world that she has to influence and change in multiple ways, in multiple impossible ways, in order to have the thing that she wants. And there is this big theme of duty and desire for both main characters. And I I love when a story feels when the barriers feel insurmountable, feel impossible, because that I think forces the most change in a character, and it's something that we tend to not expect. And so that's really what I wanted to do with their romantic relationship, is force them to see each other and see themselves so clearly that they decide that they're going to find ways to overcome things that seem impossible.
Great, thanks so much. Well, believe it or not, we are almost down to the end of our time. So I am going to ask DJ Allen's question, which is about historical research. So much historical research seems to have gone into all of these works. So DJ Allen 448 asked, was it the particular historical influences that drew out darker themes, or were you all drawn to the darker side of romance and then kind of looked for history to match? So if you each want to kind of lightning round this, because again, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Kalie, do you want to let us know your research?
Yes. I mean, Greek mythology, Hans Christian Andersen, the things I was ingesting as a child were very dark. And I think that it is a lovely foil to romance as well. I like putting them side by side.
Great, thank you. Lauren, you want to tackle that next?
For me, there wasn't a lot of historical research in this book. That's more my YA work. This one is more just like, I read Hawk Song when I was a kid and it never left my mind. I'm like obsessed with it. So that's what it's inspired by. But I do love historical research, just not this book. This one was just for fun.
And again, nothing wrong with a book for fun. We all love that sometimes. Tina, what about you?
Okay, lightning round. I would say, I'm reading the question one more time. I'd say like the story was more drawn to be bleak and dark. I wanted it to be a brutal world. And so I think the research was done to be like, okay, this is what's true of this story. Like, what happens when political power uses religion as a mechanism of control? I think that's really dark. And then I go and look for historical influences and different types of, cultures, times, things like that, where that was true, and kind of drawing out oh my God, this edict was so anyways. So yeah, I would say it was kind of the other way around for me. And I think that's all I'll say, because we're doing lightning round.
Great, thanks so much. And MK, what about you?
I think I kind of did things in the same way as Tina, actually. But definitely some of my research draws out darker topics, but my background is specifically in political violence. So I think when I'm world building, I give a lot of thought as to how the institution affects the person that I'm writing about. And it's always in a negative way, because I think I'm very cognizant of what those certain negative effects are. But as I said, I was also writing about a world in which there's kind of an ongoing moral panic. And so the more you research that, I think definitely the more you're able to bring out these dark, almost kind of creepy, culty ideals in your book. Ideas, not ideals, in your book. So yeah, I think it kind of went both ways for me.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. And again, to everyone, panelists and audience, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your time with us today. I've had a fantastic time talking about romantasy with our panelists, and I hope you have as well. Our next two panels are Culinary Adventures and Secrets and Spies. So make sure to check out these other great Day of Dialogue events. If there's anything you missed from the day, remember that recorded versions of the panels will be available soon. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day, everyone.